Welcome everyone. Welcome back to Living Transformations and our third day of conversations. Brave, like Tyrone says, brave conversations, courageous conversations. And it's a culmination of the last 2 days of where we've been, what we've experienced externally and internally, and what it looks like possibly as we move forward. What's the deepest need to take these next steps? I always say that these next steps seem sometimes like they're first steps, but they're consistent steps that need to be taken, because as soon as we forget, as soon as there's a plateau, then we come into a space where we are today, I find. Um, so the first question I'd like to pose to everyone as it rises for you, please share, is in your experience, what has been the modules, the modalities rather, the philosophies, the practices that really anchor you and help you to meet the external of what happens in this world and what happens in our world as we have created it. So please share.
So I'll share one practice that has really helped and served me a lot in the last few years, and that is the recognition that when we meet someone, usually we form a first impression, and that first impression is derived from a number of filters that we're looking through, usually unconsciously. So the filters might be race, gender, body type, accent, sexual orientation, and all kinds of things that we kind of form an impression of a person, and it's usually in a split second. And unless those filters are looked at, we tend to relate to that person from the first impression from there on in. And we're not actually relating to that person as they are or from their lived experience. And we're not even relating to them as they evolve and change. We're actually relating to an object, to a sort of set first impression, and it doesn't change. And what I'm learning is to really, really meet another fresh in each moment, and to check that I'm relating to them in the now rather than from a whole set of filters that I have been looking through unconsciously, and very often from conditioning, from social programming and conditioning. And it's not helpful, and it's very hard to meet someone when you're only relating to a first impression of them rather than from my heart and feeling them with my whole body. So that's something I practice as often as I can on a day-to-day basis, just really checking what filters am I looking through, what assumptions am I making about someone who I don't know. They are a mystery to me, and I am a mystery even to myself. So, you know, how do we ever know someone other than to just keep meeting fresh, as unfiltered as possible? And obviously we all carry certain lenses, certain assumptions, but it's when they're unconscious that I find that they create a lot of separation and a lot of misunderstanding.
When you were saying that, I thought of this the website that I was building, especially for this event, and we were changing things and putting in donate buttons and updating things, and the cache on our phones, especially, and also on the computer, wasn't updating, and so we were having these old models, these old pages, and there was new things coming in, and it wasn't keeping up because we have these caches that make life easier. It makes our phones run faster so that you take cookies in and you don't have to repopulate everything. But taking that time as human beings, maybe it's fine for compute. In this case, it didn't work even well for tech, but maybe that's all right. But as human beings meeting other human beings, maybe we take the time and we don't make it easy and quick. Okay, you look like this, so this is the box you'll be in, you know. And that was, it was really frustrating for me in the tech world, and I cannot, and I know that I do that in personal world, and that's got to be even more sad, right? And so what do we, yeah, what
Yeah,
do
the mind
we,
wants to box and
yeah, yeah, please go ahead. We're on a little bit of delay, Kali.
sorry, I was just going to say, sorry.
We're on a little bit of a delay, so you go ahead. If I interrupt you, please keep going. I'm just not up with you yet.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say that it's so much easier to just box people, pigeonhole them, and then relate to that from there on in. It kind of feels like then I know what's going on and I'm in charge and in control. It's harder to keep meeting each person in every moment as the unknown, as a mystery, as something fresh to discover in each and every moment. But it's so rewarding. So it takes a bit of effort in the beginning and a bit of deconditioning of how we usually relate. But the reward that comes from meeting, even someone like, Renika, you've been married, were you saying 16 years? Yeah.
12 years, been together for 18.
Right. And to meet each other fresh each day, right? Just like this ever-present mystery, as opposed to, oh, I know you, you this, you that. And that for me also keeps relationships vibrant, dynamic, interesting. So, imagine if as society we could meet each other like that.
Does anybody have any, I think that there are authentic relating practices that I'm not really familiar with, but does anybody here have practices that help with this? It seems to me that there must be, asking different questions when you first meet somebody, and approaching an interaction from in a way that will get us out of our programmed responses.
Well, kind of going off of what Kali said, I think you bring up some great points there, because I think of a line by Eckhart Tolle who says, "We are beings of unfathomable depth," right? And when you're talking about people with that kind of depth, and each human being has their own unique level of depth, it's gonna take time and patience and understanding to get to know someone, for whatever kind of relationship you're building, to get to know someone that deeply. So there's a couple things that I think practices. These aren't some kind of tried and true. They don't have a name or anything. But a couple things that one I do is I pause. A lot of times when situations happen, including incidents where you and another person may have a disagreement, I try to pause and become aware of what's happening in the present moment, inside of me, what's happening in the surroundings. It really gives me a sense of calm and gives me a chance to really get my wits about myself. The other one actually comes from Tyrone, actually, and it's before I speak, I listen, because when I listen, I learn. And that is so powerful because you don't learn how to get in relationship with people to that level by talking. You learn by listening and learning about who they are, learning about the intricacies of that individual, or that situation or whatever you want to do. So that's transferable to relationships, to jobs, to anything like that. So those two things, I like to pause and listen before I speak.
I think I just want to also add to some of that and just say, you know, some of what's been really helpful for me is to know that not knowing is actually the beginning of, I guess, you know, expanding your awareness and consciousness, and not assuming that we know. I think we carry ourselves because we live in this world that is so fast, and so much pressure on knowing things, on being clever, on being intelligent, of stepping into a room and already knowing how to command it. And I think being really vulnerable in that place of not knowing is quite a powerful powerful aspect of one's character, to know that you don't know everything, you don't know how things are, and to then expose oneself to different worldviews, to expose oneself to different ways of being, of how people live. And because I think, obviously, you know, the danger of a single story, again, that whole thing, to really expand our us looking at different people, cultures, and how we look at that, and not just staying in our bubble of what is normal, of what pleases us, but also stepping out of that and engaging in not knowing and saying, oh, this interest, I'm curious about that. I think another thing that I usually use to navigate the external versus what goes on inside of me is I tell myself, like, let's say 2 or 3 truths about things. And I think why I do that is I train my internal guidance system of what is true for me. And so I'll tell myself, you know, certain things that are true, very basic things, you know, so that I know how my body responds to my own truth. So I'll say, my name is Zola, and then pause and wait and see how my body responds to that. And if you are sensitive enough to feel that, then you can feel how your body responds, and then tell yourself something that is not true, and then see how your body responds, so that you know the different kind of states in your body, what they feel like, so that when something comes outside of you, you can be grounded in what is true for you, because you've developed or strengthened that muscle of what is true for you. So I do this with my daughter, and we do like 5 things. What is true right now? I love you. And we get to feel what that is, you know. You know, I am your mother, and she gets to feel what that is. And then we say stupid, silly things, you know, like I am, you know, whoever, you know, and she starts laughing because she can feel that there's a difference to what I've said. So these are just basic things to just help me, I guess, train my internal guidance system to what is true in my moment. Yeah.
I just like to give myself permission to feel, to just really go in. And it's okay if I'm not showing up in the way that I normally can hold space. And I think particularly for those who are space holders, healers, parents, we hold spaces in a way where we have the answers, or we are able to somewhat take our emotions out of certain circumstances. And I always have to just give myself permission to feel the hurt, to feel the pain, to sit in it and be uncomfortable. to just be uncomfortable for just a little while and then do the things that I know to do. Meditation, my breath work, my movement work, my relationship work, to make sure that I'm touching the people that I hold dear to me. But the biggest thing for me that I always have to remind myself that it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to feel pain. And it's okay for everything not to be, the sunshine and roses and rainbows, but then also to think about what happens after the storm. That once I get past this, I'm going to be that much stronger. I'm going to be that much wiser. The lessons that I'm going to learn by moving through this space and actually feeling it and learning the lessons that I need to learn from it.
Yeah, for me, it's really about rhythm. Is having a rhythm in life. Everything in life for me is circumstantial, so I don't have one uniform answer that can be the answer for the all. So sometimes we experience many different things, but I go back to rhythm because for me it's like music. Depending on what the beat is, you got to be in rhythm with that beat. And life is the same way. Is when things happen, you have to learn how to be flexible to move with the time, the current state that you're living within, and not have this fixed response on what you think you should be doing. It's really just, okay, let me be in harmony with the world around me. And as we talk about nature, oftentimes people say, I love nature. I love being out in nature. And then you say, well, do you love hurricanes? Do you love earthquakes? Do you love tsunamis? And people, absolutely not. That's terrible. And really what that means is we're not in harmony with nature, because those things too exist. And we must be in harmony with them to take ourselves out of those spaces that harm us when we know they don't serve our best interests. And when you're an innovator in society, when you do things that people aren't used to, you have to learn how to develop a bulletproof mind, because the world will shoot you with criticism when you don't align with what they align with. And they'll tell you, if you don't do these things, then you don't fit into our bubble. So being able to develop a bulletproof mind is going to allow an individual to overcome a lot of obstacles, and it's going to allow them to show other people how they can also overcome a lot of situations in life that we aren't aware of, because people are always going to criticize you and tell you you're not good enough, or you should be doing things like this, and align with the status quo. And oftentimes the great thinkers and people who are changing the world never do. So those are things that I remind myself as I'm doing this work, and just trying to have conversations that people aren't comfortable with, and doing this work that people aren't comfortable with. And sometimes it's not easy ever, but yet we still continue.
And would you say, when you say a bulletproof mind, do you have resources that people can look to for that? Are you doing that work with I'm Unique, or are there some resources you can point people to?
It's not a direct resource. It's really just internalized studying yourself, studying where you got your identity from, where you got your values from. And I feel like if you know what you value, it's easier to move in this world. When you don't know what you value, someone can implant what they want you to value and begin to dictate how you move in the world. They become your remote control. So we think about a remote control for television, but we don't think about the mental remote control that people hold on us because of the culture that we've subscribed to, or the train of thought that we subscribe to. And I think that whole saying in itself, train of thought, bulletproof mind, is around training your thoughts. Think about that. Training your thoughts is not having a fixed response when things make you mad. So if someone cuts you off while you're driving, the fixed response is to start cussing or saying things, or some people put their finger out the window, and those are all fixed responses. You've been conditioned to do that. Some people, when they get mad, they go punch a wall, they go kick a wall, they go get angry, because those are the fixed responses that they've been conditioned to respond with. So creating a bulletproof mind is saying that too is a part of life and moving forward, and not allowing it to control you emotionally. Oftentimes we're easily emotionally controlled, and people can maneuver us in ways that we don't even know psychologically, because we haven't realized that we have to do the internal work to be able to not have those fixed responses when certain things happen, and they can pull the strings behind the curtain and make us do certain things without us even realizing that it's taking place. So when we talk about meditation, I think meditation is simply the direction that you aim your mind. Oftentimes we talk about it in a sense of relaxation or going into a deeper space, but it's really just being able to aim your mind at things that produce your growth, things that feed your growth, things that were going to water the growth in your mind to be able to live a life that you find suitable for you. And realizing that, you know, the pursuit of happiness, I once heard a quote that was really powerful and profound. The pursuit of happiness doesn't guarantee happiness because you're still in pursuit of it. And that's something you have to remember as well, that doing this work is not going to guarantee that it's all going to work out, but continue to keep moving forward. And there's another conversation I'll share. I asked a question to a person. I felt like he had one of the best answers ever. And that was Don Cheadle, the actor Don Cheadle. You may have seen him in Iron Man or Ocean's 11, 12. And I had a conversation with him many years ago, and the question was asked, what would you tell a young actor or actress that wants to pursue a career in the field? And his response was, go to college, go get the degree, don't do it. Because the world is going to judge you. The world is going to tell you that you're not good enough. They're going to tell you that this person is better than you. This person looks better than you. This person acts better than you. They have everything that you don't. So why would you put yourself in that kind of position? You know, there's a lot of things that you can fall back on when you go to college and you get a degree and you set yourself up for success. But when you go into this field, you don't set yourself up for success. You set yourself up to be critiqued. You set yourself up for people to judge you and to be online just breaking you down. And then he ended with this: if that stops you, then it really wasn't meant for you. Because there's nothing I should be able to say to get you to determine what you're going to do or what you're not going to do with your life if it's something that you really want to do. All I did was prepare you for what the world has to offer. And sometimes it's going to be pain, it's going to be hardship. And if you're okay with that, then that's what you need to know before you get in that field. And I think that's developing a bulletproof mind, is knowing ahead of time some of the things that may come your way while doing the work.
Yeah, and I think what you say also is knowing the things that might come into your world, but so having done the work to know what is interesting to you enough that what, you know, the hurricane that's happening around you is not going to distract you from knowing in your heart what you want to do, who you are, where you are, and what you want to do with your life.
You know, I think of, as Tyrone, as you talk, and the examples that come to my mind are, you know, like a guy like Bruce Lee, who was had his body and mind so physically and mentally prepared that no one can approach him with anything that he was not already prepared to handle. Think of your great orators who have always been prepared for any conversation at any point in time, at any moment, no matter what. You know, mastery of self means you're prepared for whatever situation arises that comes your way. Not necessarily, like you said, that you have some standard operating procedure that you just put into play as soon as something happens. That spoke to me. That spoke to me, and it just continues to connect to what we were talking about with that whole idea of mastery of self and getting to know who you are on a level where you are truly comfortable and truly at peace because you understand how you're moving through the world and you're prepared to react no matter what it throws at you. I like that. I like what you said, Shira.
What do you think about what we were saying earlier, that it's also important to allow for not being prepared? You know, if you're preparing, if your security is around being prepared and something happens that, I mean, we know that we can't really prepare for everything, right? So
yeah, I think, like I said earlier, for things that kind of right now, many people had goals in place and they said in 2020, I'm going to accomplish A, B, and C. And then COVID says, you know what? Absolutely not. You're not going to accomplish any of that. And that's the piece when I was talking about being flexible for things that you can't prepare for or are unaware of. But one thing that you can prepare for is mentally being in yourself. Like, okay, this too is a part of life. You know, death is a part of life. So sometimes it happens we weren't aware of its presence, but we know in the back of our mind that it's going to happen to everyone. And being mentally prepared sometimes is just saying that this too is a part of life and walking in that space. And like Renika said, being able to feel the pain and realize that pain too has value. You know, sometimes we try to say pain is something that we put on the back burner and we don't really hold it up. But your pain can allow you to speak to people in ways that no one else can, because now you can relate to that pain that they're so used to. And people who can't relate to that pain cannot relate to you in that story. So it's going to be able to connect you to people that you've never had access to before. And it was your pain that united the people. So it's not really saying that you're going to be prepared for everything. It's just saying I'm going to be flexible and do the best that I can in the process.
And that's exactly what I think it speaks to for me. An example would be, so Gromik, you talked about being a coach, right? When you coach teams, you prepare the athletes not for what they are going to see, but you prepare them for what they may not see, right? You prepare their bodies to react in a way in which, you know, they can make the successful play, even though they've never seen that play yet. They haven't seen that person's body move the way that they move. And I think you could do that with the mind as well, where you've prepared the mind to react in a way that's gonna produce the results that you need to produce no matter what. And I just think so. The very act of being prepared is understanding that you are not prepared, but you have to be ready for whatever that is that you've never seen before.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dwayne. You can never be prepared for every situation. Just to come back to some of the questions that you've asked, Whitney, I think that there are a couple of models that are quite popular and commonly used in the coaching sphere. But I just want to premise by saying what we're talking about lately, the gist of what we are covering, I would encapsulate as being emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more that has been presented lately to indicate that emotional intelligence is actually far more important than the traditionally valued IQ. And the more we can hone that, the better we can be prepared to deal with a variety of situations.
Yeah.
And the first thing is knowing what your emotional state is. Like Zola has indicated, practice, you need to be aware of what you're feeling. You need to be able to read your body. You need to be able to pick up on the cues that indicate that you are now anxious, that you are nervous. You don't have to resist it. It's about appreciating and reading and making use of that richness of information. That is what helps you to be more prepared. And I want to slightly contradict the idea of being completely open and reading things completely objectively by saying that some of what we go through in terms of our consciousness is actually limited versus what is already embedded and established in our less conscious state. And sometimes you need to make use of that too. The point is, you shouldn't allow that to go off on its own and actually be guided completely by that instinct, as we typically put it, or that gut feeling, but to rather make use of your cognitive and analyze, and as Dwayne said, pause before you actually act and make a decision. The other model that I wanted to share is around typology of people. So there are a range of personality profiling tools that are used. I think the most important thing to be aware of, which in terms of being more integrated and being more enlightened, is that all of the personalities do exist in us. So if there's something that you don't like, that you don't feel good about somebody else, one of the ways to help with your empathy is to actually acknowledge that it actually exists within you. And the challenge is for you to see that, acknowledge it, and accept it, because part of your resistance is you fighting the fact that you actually do have that element within you. And that's part of what can create hate and resistance and otherness. But we need to work towards being embracing and just appreciate that you may have integrated that element and being able to contain it and put it in its place, but be aware that when push comes to shove, you are actually capable of tapping into that particular character and showing up in a completely different way that you otherwise wouldn't want to be seen to be. That's it.
Yeah, there's a relationship modality. An author named Harville Hendricks works with, it's usually intimate relationships. He's written a book many years ago called Getting the Love You Want, and he developed a system called Imago Dialoguing, and it says very much like that we all have these personality types within us, and often it's the things that we don't like, that we push away, are the things that we are most terrified of showing up again, and we've worked so hard to get rid of them that when they come up, we reject them most vehemently. So if we have those responses, oftentimes that's an opportunity to see. It's like a very clear signal. This is something that I can use to move past my limitations. So that's just, I just want to give people an opportunity, some takeaway thing. That's something that also that they can go in this book, Getting the Love You Want. It's been around for 30 or 40 years. Harville Hendricks has been doing a lot of research for the past 40 years, and quite interesting. And it's relationship, but I think that we're all in relationships. We're all relating, you know, and as intimate as we want to get, it doesn't have to be sexual. It doesn't have to be a marriage or an intimate partner. I mean, a life partner. But we can have an intimate interaction with the cashier at the shop. You know, if we want to know that person, even for that moment, it becomes intimate. And so, how do you show up? And I think that I've used this system really in all my relationships with every human being, every being, actually. So I appreciate that, Gromick. And this is, again, something that people can go and study if they're really interested.
Yeah, I can highly recommend Harville Hendricks and the Imago approach. Imago is mirror in Greek. So, you know, this idea that everyone is a reflection of ourselves. And if we triggered, it's usually because it's something that hasn't come to peace within ourselves. And then we want to project it out onto someone else. It doesn't mean to say we don't have discernment and we can, you know, say we like this and we don't like that, but it's more when something gets triggered, it usually means it's something that isn't resolved and integrated within ourselves. So it is always a very useful opportunity when being triggered to see what is it that I haven't brought to peace within my own being. And the other thing I wanted to build on from Gromick is there's actually now something called social quotient. So you get IQ, which is rational intelligence, EQ, emotional intelligence, and then social intelligence or spiritual intelligence. And they say they actually build on one another, that you cannot have a high IQ unless you've really developed your rational intelligence to a certain level. And that emotional intelligence is a more encompassing intelligence. It's more multidimensional than your linear rational intelligence. And social intelligence, and this is something that I feel is what should be developed in schools, in children. The two criteria or the two qualities of a high social intelligence is the ability to embrace diversity and the ability to embrace rapid change. And so someone with a very high SQ is well placed to move in today's world, where, you know, the world is a village. We're exposed to far more than ever before, and it's changing exponentially rapidly. So SQ is a very, very important intelligence that we don't speak about enough, I don't think.
Yeah, building on that, Carly, I've been sensing into how that cannot be possible when we are armored and we are in stories. Then that sense of being able to branch out, like in the Taoist tradition, the 5 elements of the wood expression is very much about individual expression, but being a tree is also being part of the forest and being able to connect with others. And when there is a sense of, for whatever reason, fear or a sense of needing to protect, that these armors come up, and emotionally, what can penetrate that? You know, what we really need in the moment to be able to, like Dwayne says, pause. And I like to actually take a walk. Sometimes I actually need to remove myself from the situation and from a moment so that I can feel the intensity, because it is intense, the feelings for me that arise. And sometimes I just need space to take a moment, and then I can come back and not even just re-meet what is happening, but an entire perspective changes when there's been a moment to expand and allow fully, rather than stay in this contracted, I know this, I need to fight for this, it's me against the world. You know, really, really strong ideas that have helped us before. But, you know, in our desire for closer relating, for more intimacy, we have to admit that they're not helping anymore.
You know, following up on that, I think that's so important to understand. And as we think about what it means to embrace diversity, you know, diversity has defined the existence of humanity and existence on this planet. Diversity of the gene pool, diversity of thought, diversity of emotions, diversity of reactions, right? So embracing diversity is far larger than just, say, embracing someone that looks different than you, right? And so as I hear you say that, like, that's whoever's interacting with you is going to need to understand and embrace how you need to navigate that situation, and to allow you to navigate that situation and understand that eventually you two will come back around to solve whatever that issue is, or you'll come back to address it. Everything we do in life, there's going to be another truth that is just as rational, just as believable, just as valid, another perspective that is just as, holds just as much truth as our own. And very much like another thing that I've heard from Tyrone, you know, we can only see you only see things from your perspective, right? So there's going to be someone else that has a different one. That creates diversity in and of itself. So the idea of what it means to embrace diversity, I think we have to keep going down that rabbit hole and just starting to understand even more and more and more what that actually means and how many levels that goes to for us to have to embrace.
Yeah, and
Yeah, Dwayne.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go
I wanted to support Dwayne's view on the relevance of embracing diversity, picking up from Kali's identification of that aspect with regards to social intelligence. I indicated a couple of days ago that I was reluctant to engage in racial awareness workshops in the early days of my facilitation career, because I felt like it was kind of forcing people to transform when they were not ready and not interested. It's like, okay, we're required as corporates to train people. But what I've found a lot more exciting to do, and which I continue to immerse myself into, is diversity training, because I take it way beyond racism. And I spoke earlier about personality profiling, and there's also a reference to different forms of intelligence. It goes way beyond just the two that we've spoken about, or the three that we've spoken about. Some say that it goes beyond 100 forms of intelligence that have been identified. The key is that when we talk embracing diversity, we actually help to raise the consciousness of each individual without necessarily harping on the emotive and divisive element of racism. And if you take note, you will recognize that by helping people be more open and more embracing, it opens up the door to also embracing across the racial line. So when people in South Africa try to deny that they are racist, the idea is to make an individual recognize that it's impractical for you to be free of racism. At the end of the day, it's legislation that we have to all look through, and it's carried through in terms of our social strata. But more importantly, there are just way too many things that are different, even within your own culture. Have you embraced even people within your own family? Do you accept and acknowledge their difference, or do you see that as a source of criticism and otherness? And by opening that door, you then allow people to continue the growth in terms of consciousness that leads to an improved social intelligence.
Yeah, that feels to me, chronic, like something, the seed that is needed for that is something that Zola mentioned earlier on, is curiosity. That, like with the child's curiosity to meet everything and everyone with that, that's when we can really see, when we can get out of our ideas, like you said, Carly, of our first impressions, and not just curiosity of a new person, curiosity of a way someone is behaving or interacting, like just how can we grow or plant that seed of curiosity in our children, because it's there, but how do we sustain it? And I wonder if that is a practice. I mean, we've got so many parents here on the panel. So are there ways that you help to foster that sense in your children? Or maybe help them, let them remind you of how to be curious.
You know, I think it's hard when you let them out into the world for them not to have their light, extinguished, right? Every time they walk out those doors and they're out of your walls and out of your loving embrace, they're going to combat against people who are going to push them down. We talked about earlier about how there's always going to be people who are criticizing you, who are saying that you're not worthy, or and kids are cruel. We have the teaching, the education system, whether it's I didn't get my name called to answer this question, that in itself, something simple like that can, extinguish someone's light for the rest of their life, and they'll never raise their hand again for something that simple. And it could be just a matter, not even of the attention of the teacher. She's called another student that needed to be called on. But I think for us, the biggest thing is, as much as we can control, is to help to ignite them, to allow their curiosity, to help provide them with tools to critically think through situations, to keep sparking curiosity, like you said, and in that, I think it's more of a they're not ours. We've been blessed to help guide them through this world until they reach a point when they can guide themselves. And so when they come up with their ideas or their plans or their things, it's not a matter for us to say yes and no in the sense of big worldviews. Of course, as a parent, you do have to say yes and no to certain things. But for their views, their values, how they see the world, when we're talking to them about things, they may have a value system or something that they think that's not aligned with the way we think. And it's okay to let them know that their voice, their truth doesn't always have to align with the people that you love, but you can still have that relationship in hopes that when they do go out into the world, they can still hold those values and continue to share relationship and share space with other people without trying to then get them to align to theirs.
I'd like to just headline self-esteem. And there's a book that I read, and I know that Dwayne, you did mention this yesterday about self-esteem in kids. There's a book that I read ahead of my rearing of my son, which really has informed me and actually reinforced what I believe my father applied in his parenting style towards me. And it's called Self-Esteem, The Key to Your Child's Future by Tony Humphreys. And what's, I think, most significant to point out is that he says it only takes one parent. So this notion that, a kid needs to be in a nurtured, full family setting, he debunks that, and he actually helps to empower each one of us to say it only takes one good parent. And even if there are two parents in the process and one of them is doing a terrible job at it, as long as one of the parents is good, that child actually has a chance. And it need not be a biological parent. So some of these parents could be a teacher, it could be a yogi trainer at school, it could be a sports trainer, a sports coach. It just takes that one parental figure to help establish that self-esteem. And believe me, we all go through all kinds of challenges as we grow up. But without self-esteem, we take trauma that lives with us into our later years in life. And it can reshape the way we interact with the world. So if we can instill a healthy self-esteem in our kids, it's the key to success.
I have to say it's such a, I'm so quiet because it's such a, yeah, being a parent is so, oh my goodness, what a journey it is. And what I've learned and what my daughter has taught me about being a mother and what she wants to learn about this world. And a lot of the times I'm so scared because of so much that is going on outside and in this world, and I feel so not equipped in so many ways. And I think a lot of the times for me, the gift of just letting her see me feel things, letting her see me go through things and cry and be truthful and let her have all her feelings, you know. And I know that in my upbringing, you know, that wasn't allowed. And so I think now it's so important for me to let her experience all the feelings that want to be in the space. And it is so hard because it's not it's not my default. But I think just being truthful with her has helped so much, you know, because that's one of the things that is really important for me, to really feel this landscape and to let her know what it's been like to move in this landscape as a Black woman, what it's been like to experience all these worlds, and knowing that, yes, she is not mine. She is forging her own set of values, and I think also to expose her to as much as possible as to all the different people and cultures. And I mean, I'm really fortunate to have you know, been born as a, you know, in African culture that really has just such beautiful values around children and family, and to let her see that and expose her to that, and to just see how she's just flourishing. So I think just children just want to see the real of us, you know, just the real of us. And I think in this, we want to be parents, we want to be mature and and like, yeah, I'm the parent, and that's great, you know, but we also just human beings moving through this world, trying to figure out how to be in this world. Yeah, and there's basic things that I wanted to know. I wanted to know how to grow food. I wanted to know how to create shelter. I wanted to know where to get water. I wanted to know how to resolve conflict. I would like her to know how to share with others. I'd like her to know how to open her heart. And these are not necessarily things that she's being taught at school. And obviously school is not for that, perhaps. But yeah, I do have a softness around it that I navigate with, and I think it's an yeah, it's a curiosity, and it's an everyday kind of thing to do that. Yeah.
You know, you said a few things there that sparked me, Zola. The first one is navigating the experience of life as a Black woman. And I really do think that one of the most interesting revelations I've had about being a parent, especially parents of Afro-Latinos, is the duality of the world that I have to teach them through, right? I have to teach them about a world that they want to live in, that they should be striving to build, and also how to protect themselves against the world that actually exists right now, you know? And, you know, sometimes those are hard conversations. And over the last few months, we've had a chance to dig into those conversations with our kids. But the understanding of you're building a world that's different, and we want you to strive to build a world that's different than the one that currently exists, can be a tough thing for them to wrap their heads around understanding what that looks like and what that means. And I think one of the biggest tools that you also mentioned, Zola, in bringing that up is my kids see me as a human being too, right? So I kind of have taken, the power dynamic exists in levels and in phases, right? You know, the younger they are, the more the power dynamic exists. And that turns more into humanity as they get older, because you poorly equip your kids when you don't expose them to the things that you experienced emotionally, physically, and, you know, in all different levels, right? And there comes an age and a time when you can't share that. But I think it's important for your kids to understand who you were when you were their age. How did you respond to things when you were their age? How did you make sense of the world? And how that's evolved over time, because they're in the process of doing exactly that. And we as their parents, they've modeled their lives after observing and watching us in our emotional states as we respond and react to things. So the biggest tool that I've given my kids in helping them understand how to navigate that duality is sharing how I have, and sharing how I've made it through it, and how I've put those pieces together. And then they can adjust that based on their current paradigm and their current time of existence.
Yeah. I think one of the most important questions that I've had in my life is wanting to know how my grandmother moved through the space of being a Black woman, and how my mother moved in that space as well, and had so many questions, you know, that were really important for me to know. And so now, as a personal project, I guess, I'm currently writing a book to my daughter about all my feelings, all the things that, from many different things, sexuality, to, you know, feelings, from so many things that I'm writing at the moment, the landscape of my inner being, so that I can pass that on to her, so that she can have something that I've gone through, and as a practice to just do that, and maybe she can actually do that and pass that on to, because I think that, you know, in our family tree we lose so much information of things that we just really don't know. There's so many questions I have about how my mother moved through spaces that I could not even imagine, you know, and now I have an opportunity to write those things for her. And it just excites me because I have a chance to pass on my life experience to just one person. And if she's the only one that ever reads it, that's it. I'm happy. And just to, you know, so important. And she's taught me so much. She's taught me how to be this gentle being, and taught me so much, and they teach us so much. And I think sometimes, I mean, obviously I'm preaching to the yeah, to the choir. You know, they teach us so much, you know, about ourselves. I think just the emergence of her being in my life has brought so many dimensions to the human being that I am, and bring forth in this world, because I want to fight for things just because she's here. I want to live, you know, I want to be healthy just because she's here, you know. And so yeah, she's my guru in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone has said so far. For me, what this conversation makes me think about is all adults are recovering from their childhood, and we spend a great deal of time trying to figure out all of the traumas that came along with growing up. And for me, I think back to my mother and being a parent, a new parent at that. I'm 2 years in, so I'm still wet behind the ears. Still have a lot to learn. But my mother has been my teacher, my parent, my provider, my protector, and her story has allowed me to understand what it means to recover from your childhood. At the age of 4 years old, my mother was on the streets, and all of her siblings were taken away, and she grew up in a foster care system. So you think about the parallels with slavery and just being taken away from your family and not knowing pieces of your history and growing up alone with people that you don't know and people who still don't care about you, even when you go into a new home. So there's so much additional trauma that comes along with that. And then you grow older and then you say, well, it's my turn to do it. And she did the exact opposite of everything that she had to go through. And I think sometimes as parents, we have to be constantly reminding ourselves that we can share stories, but we can't contribute to their pain from our pasthood and our trauma that we begin to pass down to them, because this is what we experienced, this is our reality, and I want you to experience that same pain. And she didn't do that for me. She said, I'm going to protect you and keep you safe from that pain. And I appreciate her for that. And I think oftentimes a lot of parents say, I want you to experience this, it's going to make you stronger. In actuality, it hurts them in the long run. And those are things that we have to remember. And just being on the street at 4 years old, surviving for yourself. And, her siblings were only a couple of years older, and some of them eating out of the garbage can to survive. So, right here in America, land of the free, and where things are supposed to be working out, and there was so much that came along with that. And as I look in the streets today, here in Denver, Colorado, there's a lot of people who live on the streets, some people living in tents, more than I've ever seen in my entire life, being here. So there's a lot of things we're not getting right. And when we say, no justice, no peace, and you hear people screaming that in the streets, I want my child to know when there is no justice, it's hard to sleep at night. It's hard to process the world that we live in that does not create peace for everybody. And reminding my son about the conditions in which we live, I think is equally important to loving him, because that's what's going to inform him on the world that he lives in, so he doesn't have to live in this protected field. The saying that you're over here and everything's okay, is saying that, if we don't get this right, then everybody's going to suffer in the process of someone else's pain. And saying who should protest and who should talk a certain way, or say, oh, this person is speaking aggressively. Well, this person is hungry. Maybe they have the right to speak aggressively. Or to say this person shouldn't be doing this. This person is in pain and you're not doing anything about it. So let them raise their voice as loud as they can to be heard, because obviously we aren't hearing them. So I think we have to continue to keep breaking down these barriers and telling our kids the truth about history, telling our kids the truth about our condition, and not sugarcoating it just because it sounds good and it makes everybody comfortable. So for me, it's like Renika and Dwayne, I think they're perfect examples of that. We have a program called Breaking Bread, Breaking Barriers. Sometimes we go to the streets. We have conversations with people who live on the streets, and we provide food. And one thing that Dwayne and Renika did is they brought their kids along many times, and they put their kids in really challenging positions, to where one of their kids, 6, 7 years old, he looks down and he sees a needle. He sees a needle that was full, like it had drugs in it. Somebody shot up with that needle. And that was a learning moment for the kids to say, okay, this isn't good, but this is a part of your reality. So next time you see it, you know how to stay away from it. In addition to some of the people who are on the street, they're high on drugs, and some of their responses are very aggressive and can be perceived as violent, where we all had to come together and protect the tribe against what may have came to the kids. But they put their kids in that situation and let them know the reality. They said, this is the world, and they had a conversation about it, and they educated them in a way that was hands-on. And I think oftentimes we protect them from afar, but they put them in. And I think that is a beautiful thing because they were protected as well, but they were learning in the process of the world we live in, and they didn't sugarcoat it, and they did talk about the reality. And I think so often we want to just make everybody feel good, and I think that's detrimental to our growth.
Yeah, there's a phrase, especially in yoga and a lot of the traditional systems, is short-term comfort does not equal long-term comfort, long-term success, long-term happiness, nirvana, if you want, whatever that term is for you. But short-term is not the determinant factor. And it doesn't mean that you can't be comfortable in the short term, because this is also your life. But looking at the situation and seeing that maybe this is a confusion that I'm going through. And when I get more information, then and that information getting can be unpleasant. If it's going against what we have seen as pleasant, what we've been told is pleasant, then we have to change these mental constructs that we have. As you were saying, Tyrone, these images that we have in our mind are often more painful than changing physical realities, but they're going to be the ones that affect us the most and going forward. And I also wanted to just add one thing that I have recognized in my own life, that my parents have both said, we don't know we don't know everything. We didn't do it all right, but what I know that they did do, and they never had to tell me this, was that they loved me. They loved me and they wanted me to succeed. They gave me the knowledge that I was worth succeeding. And even if they didn't give me the tools, they gave me the knowledge that I should go find those tools, that I'm worth finding, I'm worth it to myself to go find those tools and make sure that if I'm not happy, I deserve to be, that I am worth loving, and that translated to myself, loving myself eventually. We go and we move out of the nest, and we have to do it for ourselves. And then we can also pass it on. And we get it, we get nurtured, but ultimately they showed me that I was worth loving. Even if they did it clumsily, that was the most important thing.
Man, that's the humility that comes along with parenting, I'll tell you, because now that we got a high schooler, we're getting ready to send that line we've had to say to her. Like, we didn't always know. She was the oldest too, so she's kind of like the experiment too, because you don't know what's coming. So we're like, we're sorry. We know we didn't do everything right by you, but we loved you with everything that we got. That's just it. Parenting brings out, it shows you the best and worst of yourself. As I've seen some of the best habits I have show up in my kids, and I've seen some of the worst habits I have show up in my kids. And I didn't have to speak a word of it to them. They picked it up by observation, which to me, one of the most powerful lines that we've heard here today, Zola, when you just said, landscape of my inner being. That really is resonating with, just the idea of what that means. And then to be able to provide that to your children and help them navigate the spaces that they are going to be moving through. Because they've learned the mannerisms and everything about them, they've learned from you, and they've either chosen to go with it or reject it and go the opposite way, right? So.
I also really resonate with this idea of being true with our children, including our emotions, and giving them the difficult truths, but in an age-appropriate way. So my daughter's father was actually murdered when she was 6 years old, and I could have pretended that he just went to heaven, daddy went to heaven. But I told her he was killed when she was 6, and then only when she was about, 11 or 12, I told her he was murdered because I didn't feel she could handle it when she was 6. But I also wasn't going to fluff it and say, you know, some sort of fairy tale, because she knew anyway. She knew there was something really seriously wrong. And I really do believe children are more resilient than we think they are, especially if they really know they're loved unconditionally, then they can handle a lot of what we try and protect them from. And Osher said, a lie is sweet in the beginning, but bitter in the end. And truth is bitter in the beginning, but sweet in the end. And I've always believed that truth is beauty and beauty is truth. And children need the truth, your relative truth and the absolute truth. They don't need lies and they don't need sugarcoating. They're not going to grow resilient in a world that is often very harsh and alien. But if you give them both love and truth, then and then with that self-esteem, as Gromik was saying, how that is such a critical foundation for children. And I'll just end by saying that my daughter, for the first 12 years of her life, loved singing. She would sing in the car over and over again, the same songs, different songs as she got older, but she sang terribly and loudly for 12 years. And I never ever once told her that she couldn't sing, not once. I just was like, one more time with feeling, here we go again. You know, I'd much rather listen to my music, but we're going to listen to Rita the Cheetah for the 100th time. And at the age of 12, I don't know how it happened. Maybe it was just passion combined with practice, but she suddenly could sing. And she's now actually probably going to become a singer. That's what she wants to do with her life, a singer, actress, dancer, because she never knew she couldn't sing because I never told her. So she did that thing of practicing 1,000 times, you know, the Malcolm Gladwell thing. She practiced and practiced. So often I think teachers tell children way too soon that they may not really have a talent for something. Like, you know, imagine the bowler in cricket who bowled the first googly, which was like totally not how bowlers bowled. But how does innovation happen unless children can explore and experiment and fail and, you know, try things out for themselves? And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in raising a child is kind of keeping my judgments rather than discernment, and not burdening my child with them, so that she's free to really explore who she is, and at the same time be true with my inner landscape. And you know, I asked her to do as I do, not do as I say. So, you know, I had to model what I wanted her to value in life by being it for myself.
I'm so glad you brought up singing because, you know, I guess culturally we are people that love to sing. You know, we are people and humans that love, that are vibration, number one. You know, we are frequency, and we are, and I love singing with my daughter. You know, and I think also it's one of these really fundamental practices that indigenous cultures know really how to do, to move through pain, to move through so many different dimensions of life with song, you know, and we sing all the time. We sing with community, singing with other people, and songs that have been sung by our grandmothers, singing them again, and receiving the medicine from those songs, moving through death. You know, right now we're going through so much, you know, and So it's been, I love it because she loves singing with me, and we love singing in community, and so we do that. And especially now, we're discovering so many songs and so many sounds in Zulu sounds and Zulu frequencies that really are needed in this now, you know, and we're singing them, and you know, the ability for sounds and music to move us and to process things in our bodies, it's so profound. It's so profound how mantras, you know, sacred sounds can really access deep parts of ourselves and move through really deep layers of our unconscious behaviors so that we can come back to wholeness. Singing, yay, let's sing. Yeah, love singing.
And dancing.
Yes.
Let me hear a song.
Tyrone, were you asking me to hear a song?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
That song you used to sing in our dance class, and you made it up, I think. Do you remember?
Oh no, I cannot do that. Oh, this is too much on the spot. This is too much. Yeah, at the moment I'm learning the instrument behind me, if you see that, and that's an instrument. It's a Xhosa instrument, but it's also a Zulu instrument. And you place it on your heart and on your chest, and so as you play it, the vibrations go into your heart. And this
is it hard to bring closer? I can't really see it too good.
Okay, let me try and bring it closer.
I'd love us to end on a song.
The rhythm.
Come on.
And that's called what? Oh, okay.
Like a Yoruba.
Oh yeah, like in Brazil. It's similar to capoeira.
I think a lot of people have this instrument here in South Africa, but there's been a beautiful resurgence of it because of this beautiful woman called Madosini, and she's been playing this instrument for so long, and she's taught so many people. She's a legend. She's just amazing, and yeah, so she plays the tune. So I'll just play just so that you can hear what it sounds like.
Thank you.
I did not plan to do that.
Appreciate that. Impromptu is the best. That's it right there. That's life. That's living. Right there. That's it right there. Taking advantage of the moment.
Thank you for requesting that, Tyrone. I would have never ever done that.
Well, it's interesting. You look around the panel and you said it touches the rhythm of your heart because the instrument's right here, and I could say that it's touched the rhythm of all of our hearts.
Yeah.
So by you playing, the smiles on our face, levity that I'm feeling right now.
Yes.
It's powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, Fred.
To inspire our kids and those around us to live in those moments where you have to share pieces of who you are and what makes you happy and makes your heart smile. Share those with and it's gonna feel awkward at first. It may get you out your comfort zone, but it feels so good. Don't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it right there. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a saying, you know, don't just say something, sit there. You know, it's always this idea of, you know, don't just sit there, do something. And I think that it's really that don't just do something, sit there, and beautiful things will come up. Exactly like this. You know, she mentions some song, and then Tyrone says, "Hey, yeah, let's do it right now." And it's really beautiful. And I'm in this whole time. I say that because fortunately, I just sat here and didn't do anything, and I was going to try and change it to, you know, what we have, because I see now we have 15 minutes left, and about half an hour ago. All right, so let's get into the systematic things and how do we. But we're human beings, right? We're human beings, and this is how we change. I think. You know, we can talk about the systems, we can talk about all those things, which is absolutely important. But as we talked about a couple of days ago, policy without the life behind it, it takes both pieces, right? And so if we can communicate this humanity and start getting that out, and as Gromik said, it's a generational thing. You know, it may not be until all of our kids having all of these experiences, being exposed to all this different stuff, that we really start to see the change. Because my parents are like that. You know, they say, you're doing all this stuff that we wanted to do, but it was so foreign to us that when we went to Europe, when we went into yoga classes, when we went all this stuff, it wasn't, but I grew up in this stuff. You know, I grew up being rocked to sleep in tribal music and Buddhist meditations, which was weird to them, but they pushed themselves into it and it became normal for me. So the next generation now, as you know, as Dwayne, as you're talking about, like I can share with them, and it becomes normal for them what was hard for me, because this communication. And Zola, as you say, like I talk about feelings, your daughter's going to be used to talking about feelings. As weird as that is for you, your own flesh and blood is going to be totally different because you forged ahead and you fought through it, you know, and you're the kind of person who will go and get an instrument off the wall and play for us. You know, it's beautiful, and it really brings that change into the world. And maybe we didn't, you know, maybe we don't have policies to bring to Donald Trump tonight, but I think that we have an experience for everybody who sees this and is touched by this, that it really does, as Montague said, start on the grass level, you know, start on the grassroots level and get local and flip this thing on its head, and it will, I think we're doing it. You know, I hope we're doing it. And if anybody has, what I also wanted to say, if there's anything here that you guys want to point out, what you want to really stress at the moment, please share. Please feel free to share. I just want to let you know that we have about 15 minutes left. So if there's something you want to say, please say it.
I want to say this real quick to your comment about grassroots. I think in speaking to Montague's comment, I think grassroots are really important, but sometimes some people have greater reach than that. So if the reach you have is your grassroots level, then that's where you strive and that's where you do your work. If your reach is greater than that, if you already are responsible for large swaths of people and you have the ability to touch them and help them move things in that direction, you utilize the reach of which you have, because far too often we get some people who are in positions to make things happen and they say it has to start at the grassroots. Well, maybe it starts at your grassroots, but your grassroots happen to sit at the White House. Your grassroots happen to sit at Congress. Your grassroots happen to sit at, so wherever your grassroots are, you affect the circle and you do the things you can in the environment in which you exist. And then you strive to reach outside of that to affect people.
Yeah, I think that's something that I have heard many times now in the last couple of months with this movement that's happening is don't, the opposite of what I just said, of don't just sit there, do something, but in the sense of be in that space and don't just abide by the norm if you know that it's not right. You know, if you know that it's not what this sitting with yourself, as we talked about in the very beginning, sitting with yourself and knowing who you are and coming down to the emotional intelligence, and then from there listen to that and what does it tell you and act on that. And as you say, that could be if it's 4 people in your room or if it's 4 congressional districts, you know, whatever that is. But share your truth, and that's where we have to educate, you know, and educate and get what is the truth. And that's a question I had for you, Tyrone. You talk about the truth, but what I think one of the confusions is that people are, you know, the neo-Nazis and the KKKs, they think that's truth. So how do we discern what we're talking about when we say truth?
Yeah, what I said earlier is everything is circumstantial, and it really depends on what you're talking about. Earlier we talked about there being multiple truths for different perspectives. So it depends on what lens you're using to look at any given situation. So for me, I don't know. It depends on the situation that we're talking about. Is there oppression? Is that a truth? Absolutely. Is there oppression for everyone? That might not be the case. So I don't think, like I said earlier, there's not one blanket answer to address some of these complex conditions that we're in. So for me, it's really just looking at our existence and saying, are we living in a humane society? Are we living civilized as we have been told and informed? But we're not. Obviously, we're not. And I think those are the things that we can work towards. And once we become more civilized and we work towards a more humane society, all of the problems that we have will begin to reduce, because everyone's need will be met and no one will feel this sense of scarcity. Oftentimes, a lot of the actions and aberrant behavior that we see comes from this idea of scarce resources and who's in power, who's not in power, and who should be oppressed and who shouldn't be oppressed. So I think if we look at it from the root and we look at our society as a whole, we ask ourselves the real question: are we sane? Are we living in a humane society? And if the answer is no, that's where the work should start. And we won't have to have so many different movements. You have hundreds of different movements because people are feeling oppressed, because people are feeling the weight of the world. And if you deal with society as a whole and say, let's reduce all of these issues so people will no longer have to make a movement, it becomes obsolete. And I think that's really where we start, is looking at it from that lens, because if you have this movement now is going to go against this movement. And right now you can see Black Lives Matter has a lot of opposition from Black people. So you're going to have different movements always formulating, and it's going to be someone who says, well, I think it should be this way. I think it should be this way. I think it should be this way. And we talk about civil rights. Oh, this is going to benefit one group of people. Civil rights is to be civil as humans. You know, if we did that, then we wouldn't have to have so many different movements to say that let's no longer oppress these groups of people. Let's listen to what everyone has to say, and let's build a society that's more humane and everyone feels like their needs are met. And if your needs are built off of oppressing someone else, then that no longer is allowed. Right now, if we look at there's many countries right now who are still facing slavery. Some are slave trade, sex trafficking, some are really in bondage still. And we're allowing that to happen in our time. You know, if we look at it back in years past, we say, oh, that would never be in my time. I would have did this or I would have did that. But that's going on today. And we're having conversations, we're drinking our teas, we're having conversations about how we're going to go out for coffee. And we're not up in arms about that. I think that's a big problem. If it doesn't affect us, then it doesn't concern us. And I think that needs to change. But we need to really focus on what does a humane society look like. And for me, I've spent many years listening. Like Dwayne said, I've always said, before I speak, I listen, because when I listen, I learn. And I've listened to people who've been here before me. And I listen to understand. I listen to gain the knowledge. And I say, is this the only way that we can exist? And in that journey, I found a man by the name of Jacques Fresco. And I think Jacques Fresco, Killer Mike had recently talked about him. You know, he's big in America right now and doing some great work. And a lot of people now are familiar with Jacques Fresco. But many years ago, when I first had learned about him, people didn't really know who he was. And he caught my attention because he started presenting ideas that I feel like could lead us in the direction towards creating a more humane society. He says, let's create a resource-based economy. Let's change the way the structures are ran. Let's change the way that, you know, people are governed. And he had a real blueprint that can make that happen. He has a tangible blueprint that can change the direction and the course of the world, not just on a local level, but on a global level, and everyone's needs are met. So we're dealing with homelessness, we're dealing with poverty, dealing with the banking system, dealing with all of these scarce resources, the food, you know, just creating access for people in a way that we've never seen before, and allowing technology to begin to innovate itself to where it still supports the people. Right now, technology is phasing people out, and people are going to become more impoverished in the process of the elevation of technology. So I think we have to keep up with technology and allow our systems to do the same. There was one thing that he showed on Larry King many years ago. Well, it wasn't Larry King. He does a presentation around vehicles and how cars, they were creating green cars in the early 1900s, and he was presenting this stuff on big media platforms, and they took him off because of the truth that he was telling. They said, no longer let this man have this kind of platform because he's changing the way that people think. And I think someone earlier talked about exposure. Exposure, it likes the dormant qualities in the people, and it ignites a new way to exist. And that's exactly what he was doing. He was exposing people to new ways of getting things done. So there was a car that he designed, and he said, this is the way that we should build our vehicles. And he used something called nitinol metal. If you're familiar with something, it's called metal memory. So when we design our cars, we have seat belts, and we have a bumper in the front, and we have a bumper in the back. So if you ever get in a car wreck, what happens from the side? What happens? Is there a bumper there for protection? And most of the time, what people don't talk about is sometimes you get killed by the seatbelt. So, and then your car is destroyed. So what he did was use a metal memory in addition to some magnets around the vehicle. So if you ever had any kind of impact, the magnet would actually repel. In addition to, if there's any damage to the structure, the metal memory, when applied with a certain temperature, reconstructs itself. And I have some, if I can, I'll have to go get it. But so you can apply a certain temperature to that metal, and it reconstructs itself. And that would take away a lot of business for the insurance companies and people who fix vehicles, because now it can reconstruct itself, taking the engine out of the top of the car, just like Tesla did. So he was saying this long time ago, way before Tesla did it. It's been documented, verified, and this is the concepts and ideas that he was bringing to the table. And he was blackballed. And they said, don't let him speak to the people, because he was speaking so much truth on how to change systems and how to advance humanity as a whole. So I think those are some of the things that, even if we don't agree, I think we should at least listen to understand, and begin to respond from that piece. But I had the opportunity to meet him, and I had the opportunity to go to the Venus Project and learn hands-on. So I had a chance to see these things with my own eyes, hold it with my own eyes. And I spent the day with him at his house, and he began to just show me all of his innovations and some of the things that I feel are very beneficial for society as a whole. When COVID hit, everyone started creating what his idea was around the Venus Project. We had stimulus checks popping up. People are being resourced in ways that never been resourced before. So I think we really want that, but we just don't understand it enough to be able to put energy behind it to make it happen. So I think listening to new ways of thinking and listening to teach ourselves in the process. Earlier, we were talking about being parents. I think one of the most important things to do as a parent is stay relevant and continue to educate yourself, and don't feel like your education reached this plateau. And when you feel like you've arrived, it's like, no, because society is changing and you have to change with it, and you have to continue to update your information. It's kind of like in filmmaking. If you have a degree in filmmaking in 1980, 1990, it's going to be totally different from 2020. So you have to continue to update yourself around the world that you live in, and never feel like learning stops. Allow it to be forever.
Wow, we have a few more minutes. Is there anything that anybody wants to get in before we conclude for a moment and wait for Kid Astronaut to come on in a few minutes?
Well, there's one thing that I'd like to just add, just from a philosophical point of view, that sometimes we get caught up in anti and in resistance and fighting. I think that our energy is best used and more optimized when we are for something positive. So if people can focus more on just being more positive and work towards the ideal, there is a need to counter the negatives, but being consumed in that just leaves us in that vicious cycle. But we can actually step up and move forward.
All right. Well, this is, I'm going to miss not seeing you guys in our evenings. This has been an incredible pleasure and honor. And I want to also recognize Zoe for putting this all together. She has spent the last months putting this together, and it really was an amazing job. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for putting it together, Zoe. Appreciate that. And I got on a little late, and I don't know if we all said this, but to Dwayne and Renika, I know it's your anniversary. Just wanted to say happy anniversary. So appreciate you, love y'all, and I hope y'all enjoying yourself. And I really appreciate y'all even hopping on, given the fact that this is y'all special day. And spending it with us it makes it even more special. So greatly appreciate you both for it. And everyone else, it was really nice to meet everyone from South Africa. Loved everything that you had to share with us here in America. Greatly appreciate you. And looking forward to staying connected as we move forward and do this work that we're doing on this planet together.
Thank you all. Yeah, I just have to say that every day is a special day with him. So it's nice to be able to have these kind of conversations with you all too. You know, today, I think we've moved to a space where we're celebrating every day, and every day is a celebration. So you guys are just welcome into our daily celebration with each other. So I appreciate all y'all's your feedback and your comments and the way that you move your vibrations. So you guys have definitely blessed our day. So thank you all.
Well, congratulations on that. That's pretty much where many of us, I think, want to be. So awesome. Good work.
Yeah.
And I know you two somewhat, and I know that you both really are diligent and really work at it. And I think that this is the fruits of your labors. So it's really beautiful to see.
Thank you. Yeah, we love this work is us. Journey, this lifestyle, this connecting with you all. We did this every day for the rest of our lives.
Amen. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we're doing here too. In the jungle of India is trying to live it every day and bring this to the world. So she did an awesome job, and you guys,
thank you to each and every one of you for being able to be here on this panel. You actually made it. We co-created this together. I am so grateful that you said yes, and that we could spend this time together exploring more. And I think there'll be more to come. In fact, we have until next Mandela Day some regular meetings that will be happening with one of our collaborators, Find My Zen. And so this conversation isn't over. It will be continuing in different ways. So please stay tuned to us, stay tuned to Find My Zen, and we can nourish what we feel, all of us, so deeply.
And it's been so interesting. I was saying to Whitney earlier on how the 3 days, going 3 days with the same people, it's been quite something to come back again and come back again instead of just doing one live session and then but coming back again and coming back. That's yeah, that's very interesting. I found that quite helpful and useful.
Yeah, I agree with that. Initially, I thought, what? 3 panel discussions? Wow, But it reinforced in me that this is every day, every day, every day. It's
Showing
not
up.
just going to church on Sunday. It's every single day. We have to keep coming back, checking in, and noticing, this inner and outer landscape, and working towards the dream of universal love and peace and justice and fairness for everyone, not just human beings, but all our relations on the planet. I love that we had to come every day for 3 days. Now I want to have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
So I'm a fan of Kid Astronaut. Kid Astronaut's in the building. He gonna come. I'm a fan, so I gotta check it out. So I don't know if he changed the channels or what. I'm a fan. Yeah.
Absolutely good. There he is. Nice.
What's up? What's up?
Peace.
I guess this is kind of like my sound check. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
All right, cool.
Remind everybody to stay on.
Yeah, please. I'm blessed to be a part of this. It sounds like this has been a really healing conversation, and I'm just happy to be a part of something that's happening outside of the States as well. Living in America, we especially right now don't get a lot of opportunities to have worldwide connections. So thank you to Zoe, and for opening this platform up for me. And I'm just happy to be here, Tyrone as well. So thank y'all.